Hello, everybody, and welcome to another conversation in our series on why Black Lives Matter. Our conversation today is going to look into the topic of celebrating freedom. And it evolved as a result of things like Martin Luther King Day coming up and the passing of Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And so we felt like it was fitting to just look into what that celebration really is, and what that has kind of entailed for us and meant for us in our lives and our growth, and also where there is potential for additional healing, if any. So with that, I'd like to just open it up to the team to share their views. I'd like to open it up to all of you that are joining us today to please feel free to share your thoughts and experiences and insights into the topic and what any of these things mean for you, and possibly even if you have questions that you'd like to share with the team, and if we can evolve into answers there, that would be great, or just exploring the conversation in greater depth. So yeah, for me, I think the thing that really came up when finding out about the passing of Archbishop Desmond Tutu was kind of the pivotal role he played in South Africa in the liberation fight, in actually being a very strong voice against a system of apartheid, as opposed to a system of separating people according to color. So his ideology was based on the system not working, as opposed to the black victim or the white oppressor. And I think that's possibly what has endeared him to so many people, in that he chose to look at what was not working, as opposed to labeling people inside of that process. And in that it's possibly why he became quite a strong figure in what we knew in South Africa as the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, once the apartheid system had kind of been abolished and those prisoners that had been in prison were released. So he took quite a bit of that work forward. And also, the mandate that he held as an archbishop in the Anglican Church in South Africa, where he was one of the first Black leaders in those spaces in South Africa, is also quite significant. So yeah, just a little bit of historical information there to share with everybody, just to contextualize the person that we are looking at. And I'd like to invite the team to also share if they have any additional views, or even just, around the ideology of people like Martin Luther King and other people that have been instrumental in getting the voice of freedom heard and accepted and respected. So I'd like to open that up to everybody.
Yeah, I want to. Sorry, go ahead. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I want to thank you, Granville, for that, little summary of what Desmond Tutu represented in South Africa. Because I was going to ask, I know a little bit about his life, but not a lot. And for me, what stands up when I think about this generation of people that changed history is that they brought ideologies, new words, new concepts into light. And I see their influence right now there are many like texts, authors that inspire themselves from the ideologies, artists of all kinds, in the whole world. And it speaks to me to like how much of an impact and how much the world needed their presence and their work. Because like I can't imagine today what the world would be, or maybe like the work of people, the life of people, the artistry, the culture that we have today, without the influence of someone like Martin Luther King. I think it would have been very different. And you know, it feels like I feel very grateful for these people who stood in their power. When I think of the Archbishop, like he was standing up and supporting Nelson Mandela in a time where it was like pretty dangerous to be having these ideas, and he stood in his power, and it was pretty cool, and it's also pretty inspiring. And when I see people like that, I say like, oh, I can stand in my power too. Like, I think that's why of all people, like these two and Nelson Mandela were like literally figures, like icons of movements and the ending of like systems and racism. It's because like of their message and what they brought to the world. And I feel like it was good feelings, like joy and hope. I think it's very important to mention when you think about these people. Yeah, that Deji, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was going to say, similar to Granville's point, I was thinking about Sidney Poitier. He recently passed away. He is a well-known actor for he's an American actor, but he was a very good representation for the African American community in Hollywood. He was he was the first Black actor to win an Oscar, period, at all, for a lead role, which is a really, really, really big deal. And along with many others who have passed, and also he was also a really powerful force in the civil rights movement in America as well. And what came up for me is that I felt that he kind of made his mission with the things that he's done with his life, and just yeah, that's pretty much it. That he's done his life mission, and he's completed it, and not to say like, you know, like he died for a reason, things like that, you know. But yeah, just like that he completed his life mission for it, like the African American community in general. That's about it.
Yeah, and I think another thing that kind of stands out for me as well is something that we probably touched on a few weeks ago. And I think it was Diana that asked the question around, did some of the violence serve a purpose? And I think we also need to be cognizant that sometimes that was required to get movement started. But then you also have the dichotomy of people like Desmond Tutu and Mahatma Gandhi, who kind of, like they were more proponents of peaceful protest and reasoning with people and getting people to see the unity amongst themselves, as opposed to focusing as much on the racial separation amongst people. And one of the things that was quite a thing in South Africa that probably turned or brought a lot of attention to that struggle was people like Desmond Tutu calling for economic sanction. And one of the things that stood out that I kind of read up on was and some people were saying, well, doesn't that mean that Black victims will struggle more? And one of the things he said was that, well, now they will struggle for a purpose, which kind of changes the track quite a bit. Because again, it's that energy of needless suffering versus that energy of suffering because you are supporting a cause, or even that energy of, okay, in this space, violence may be required to get some attention, to get some movement, to get people to actually change policy and things like that. So I feel like there's a lot of place for all of these things. And kind of for us now sitting historically and looking at these things, it's also easy to kind of fall into that space of, well, was it right? Was it wrong? Was it necessary? Wasn't it necessary? But, it comes back to the point of, when we celebrate freedom, do we realize how much has actually changed? And something that stands out for me is, I saw a picture of Rosa Parks' Bible in the Library of Congress kind of thing. And I was like, those kind of things have that significant historical significance. And we forget those kind of things. And one of the pictures I also saw was saying, well, if this little girl could go into a school and endure in that way, you can endure this conversation. And it was just, it just shows you, and for me, it was like the significance of what they did dawned even more because of the times in which they did it. And I'm not sure if that stood out for anybody else as we've kind of been processing this topic over the last few days.
Well, it did, at least for me. And I'd say that I had an opportunity to see in my life how much things have changed. Like, it's always funny when we bring up a topic. I think God always has a way of showing me how significant it is. And so, for example, like this weekend, I had to call the police for something and interact with cops for something. And so it was around at the same time as we were like grounding the topic, and I was searching for elements to communicate on it. And so I was like, wow, 60 years ago, would I have had the freedom and safety? Would I have felt safe to be interacting with cops? Probably not. Wouldn't have been that way. Maybe 100 years ago, we wouldn't have been treated as equals. But like, now it's normal. Now it's like we are equals. We all have rights, and our power as human beings, as souls, even more, I'd say, is recognized regardless of our complexion. So it was really striking to have that perfect example at the same time as I was thinking about the topic. And so I'm like, I live in a free country. Like, it feels good. And who knows how much of the fights and the ideologies that my ancestors, my grandparents had participated in that evolution. And so, yeah, I completely agree with you. I think looking on the past is not a matter of thinking like, was the action of said people wrong or right, but like, how do we feel about it today? Is it still the case? What did it bring us? Like, what is our heritage in all of this? So yeah, I don't know. How do you guys feel about it?
One thing that came up for me as I was just kind of reflecting on the leaders that we've been talking about, Desmond Tutu, Martin Luther King, Sidney Poitier. I had a lot of sadness come up around like the loss, feeling like, which is kind of odd because I don't usually, like I recognize that life is eternal, right? That we're eternal beings. But I still felt like a lot of sadness because it was like what we've been saying, the impact that they made, and the advancements that they made for people of color. While I know it's not lost through the loss of their life, it feels like it kind of feels that way. And I kind of, well, not really, but I just think about like Martin Luther King and how he was assassinated, right? And that brings up a lot of feelings because he was such like a strong, powerful leader. And he inspired a lot of people. And like, it brings up a lot of feelings to think that people want to attack that and kill that and crush that. And it's like, as soon as Black people or people of color like make big advancements like that, or have a leader who's like really strong, someone like comes and takes it, kind of thing. And so I just had like a lot of feelings come up around that. And I was even listening to speeches from MLK, and I was just like overcome with a lot of emotions, like crying. And it was just so odd because I'm just not used to that, but I have been feeling my feelings a lot more lately. And so, yeah, I mean, that's what came up for me, is just like sadness around the loss. But what I'm recognizing is that kind of what, to Deji's point, like they had their mission, they had their purpose, and it was served, right? And death doesn't end that. It continues through the people that they inspired. So yeah, that's what came up for me.
Death is an illusion.
Yeah, I just want to check in with you. Like, if you feel into that space, are those feelings still there? Is there a residue of those feelings in any way?
Yeah, I guess this feeling of attack. I know that attack isn't real, but just kind of feeling, yeah, feelings around the assassination piece.
But feel your feelings. Don't talk yourself out of your feelings. Let them be there. Just give yourself permission to feel it. And as you give yourself permission to feel it, What are those feelings pointing to? Can you see that part of yourself that's feeling that way?
It just feels unfair.
And then that space of unfairness, is there possibly a feeling that something's been taken away from you, that your good can be taken away from you?
Yes.
Right. And so in that space where you perceive that your good isn't permanently yours, what do you need right now in that space?
Yeah. To recognize the truth.
Yeah, and let's verbalize that truth.
That my good can never be taken away, that it's eternal.
Yeah, because where does your good come from?
From God.
Right. And God doesn't leave because people that have played a part through God have transcended this plane and are no longer in physical form. God doesn't leave with them. And so the legacy of God's work doesn't leave with them. And so as you feel into that space of the legacy of God's work, can you realize, can you perceive the truth that it's always, that you are the beneficiary of it, and that you can't not be a beneficiary of it?
Yes.
How does that feel?
I guess what comes up is like the feeling that, like Martin Luther King, for example, like he had more to do. And he had an even bigger impact to make, and it was cut short, kind of thing.
So can you release the belief that you know what his impact could have been or should have been, and allow that God worked perfectly through him to that point? And that maybe that was exactly what was required for the significant shift that his work achieved.
Okay, right.
How does that feel?
Yeah, like there was purpose in it, and good. I get that good came out of it, and it feels good to recognize that. I guess what comes up is like, does something bad have to happen before the shift happens? Like, like a big sacrifice.
Have you seen evidence that something bad doesn't have to happen all the time for a shift to take place?
Yes.
So can you allow in that evidence that it's sometimes a very balanced approach, and it's just our emotional attachment to what those actions by other people mean that keep us stuck in that thought process?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How does that feel?
Yeah, that feels better.
Yeah, because we won't know God's full purpose with anybody. We don't even know God's full purpose with ourselves. And it always evolves and it always expands. And sometimes it changes direction. And sometimes it's not so great, but there's something there for us. And sometimes it's great and there's something there for us. The fact is, there's always something to discover if we are open to where God is leading and what the gift is in that circumstance or that experience. There's always a gift. And the gift always takes us deeper into our healing if we are open to exploring it.
Right.
And how does it feel to know that you can trust that knowledge?
Yeah, that feels good.
Yeah, and how does it feel to know that you can trust yourself, to feel your feelings and know your knowledge, and sometimes not know your knowledge, and sometimes learn things? How does that feel? That you can actually just trust yourself to know what feels good, what doesn't feel good, what doesn't sound right, what does sound right.
Mm-hmm.
How does that feel?
Oh, yeah, that feels a lot better. Just kind of surrendering and trusting myself in that space. Trusting
Amen.
God.
Yes. And trusting God and surrendering in that space doesn't mean giving up. It just means that sometimes it's not as clear as we'd like it to be. And sometimes that clarity isn't even for us, and we can peacefully allow it to release. To know that God will give us as much as we can deal with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How does that feel?
It feels good. I feel like I was holding on to the belief that something bad had to happen before a big shift could be kind of triggered, but like you said, it doesn't have to happen that way. I can choose peace and allow shifts to happen from a place of peace rather than from an upset or something like that.
Amen. That sounds and feels good. How does it feel to you?
Yeah, feels good to me.
Right. And in that space where you're allowing the power of your peace to return, does that settle the feeling, or is there more coming up?
That feels good.
Good. Would you like to just allow all of that to just integrate and give that part of yourself a big hug and congratulate her for doing the work that she just did?
Yeah.
Good. And thank you for sharing that with us, because I feel like it was a significant piece that we were probably kind of skipping on the surface of. And you're like, nah, we're going there. Which is really cool, because like I think there's a component of personal courage that's very different to acting out your courage or acting out of courage. It's kind of that personal courage of like, I want to look here. There's something here for me. And then once you've healed that, you might know the next action step to solidify that healing and that new choice and just allowing it to ground in. And you ground it in through those action steps as well.
Yeah, I really love that. And that felt, I really felt the shift there. So thank you for walking me through that.
You're welcome. And look how perfectly you did it, and nothing violent had to happen for it to do that.
Good. From a place of peace. Good.
You're like God delivers every single time, right? That's where your healing needed to be, and it just happened perfectly in that way.
Yeah.
Very cool. So yeah, I just want to check in with the rest of the team. How did what did Diana's healing process just bring up for you?
I'm not really sure. I don't have much to say about the healing process exactly, but like I know that I always like have more of the same thing like come up from that in regards to MLK. So yeah, it was good to bring up finally. And isn't Martin Luther King Day soon? Is that next week or? Okay, cool. Yeah. So that was good. I wanted to speak on something from a long time ago. I don't even know how exactly you worded it, Granville, but you said, like you posed the question of if we had any examples of like someone standing up for something, for lack of a better description. And I wanted to bring up someone very random, actually. It's actually Kim Kardashian. And I bring her up because Jeff had like shared some video of this guy who was filming, and some woman was like trying to get him in trouble, even though he wasn't doing anything wrong. And the police officer came and said like he wasn't doing anything wrong. Anyway, so why this brings up Kim K is because she is going to school to be a lawyer because she wanted to know the law so that like basically she couldn't get screwed over. She said the only way to really like not really fix the system, but it's just good to know the law. So that's why she's going to school for it. But she actually also went to the White House to speak to Donald Trump when he was president. And she got him to grant clemency for this woman, Alice Johnson. And Alice Johnson she was sentenced to life in prison for a first-time drug offense that was non-violent. And so she was still in prison, and Kim went to the White House and represented a few people. There was more than just Alice Johnson. I don't know the other people because they didn't really talk about that as much, but President Trump, well, ex-President Trump, granted these people clemency so they could get out of jail. And so I thought that was really cool. And that was, an example of like what you were saying earlier with just like standing up for what you believe in, but like also I think Jeff wanted us to speak on like just knowing your rights so that you can stand up for yourself, because that's the only way you can is if you know your rights, like what he shared with us with that video.
the guy was a journalist and he knew his rights, and he knew that he wasn't doing anything wrong because it was a public place. So he could do what he was doing. He could film his content for his job, no problem. And some lady was trying to harass him and tell him he was doing wrong, and he was like, no, we can go ahead and call the police right now. He's like, I'm not doing anything wrong, I know my rights. And so yeah, I thought that was all cool. Know your rights and also stand up for your rights, as Martin Luther King sets like the wonderful example for standing up for your rights. So yeah, I don't know if anyone has anything to say about that.
Yeah, I love this. I notice how the lessons that we are learning right now, or that we are pointing to right now, are the perfect answers to a lot of the topics that we talked about at length. I think in the first year, like in 2020, we talked a lot about power, our power as citizens, our power with our rights and the law, with education and with elections. And so I find that relief in knowing that finally we have an answer, a clear answer. Like, if anyone comes up and says discouraged that he doesn't know what it changes, that they are interested in elections and politics, in standing up, in speaking up. The real answer is that you honor yourself and you honor your power, you honor what everyone has fought for and the values of your society and your country, in knowing where you stand, in knowing the law, in knowing your rights. You don't really have to go to law school to know the basic rights, but true power lies here. True power lies in having that knowledge and using it respectfully and peacefully. And so, yeah, I think what we're learning is that it's way more powerful than any outrage and demonstration, even though it has its place. And I believe that the healing that Diona has just accomplished was to show that there is really no need to attach ourselves to what could have been and what happened. There is just one knowledge, and that knowledge is there to strengthen the belief that we have power and that we are divine. So yeah, I believe that, yeah, it's truly the perfect answer to that, that underlying question that we had for so long. And so, yeah, thank you for that example. It was really cool.
And I think something that you shared that also stood out was the energy of being unattached to outcomes and realizing that shift can happen powerfully in so many ways. And we kind of need to also take the step back to look at in which powerful ways those shifts have happened, whether good or bad. It's for us to be discerning about where that shift came from, and almost appreciating that we have the heritage that we have, and appreciating that we are the beneficiaries of other people's actions. And I think that's one of the things that's kind of stood out for me in reading about all of these things, was just that the line that says we are still the beneficiaries. And to be a beneficiary is a very powerful space to be in, because you're gaining something not necessarily from your own volition. You are gaining something as a result of somebody else using their significant power in whichever way they used it. They still used it. They shifted things. We became beneficiaries. And so that for me is feeding the energy of being free to celebrate freedom. Because people were our predecessors in many of these spaces at sometimes very great risk and very great pain to themselves. And we don't have to do that. We don't have to be those people now. We can be different people now. We can live in different spaces now, and we can heal in different ways now. It doesn't have to be that very physical form that it has been. I feel like that's kind of, for me, the celebration that kind of stands out to me, is that I don't have to go and stand in marches where there is significant violence or even the potential of violence. And the other thing is, there's also the space in me that goes like, I'm not sure that I would have done it. I'm not sure. And like all of those things do run through my mind. And it's just like, it's such a significantly different space to be in.
I absolutely love that, because it's taking a look at our ancestral DNA, as Jeff would say, and saying like, okay, I've got that. I cannot deny or ignore that I've got that. And what am I going to do about it? How does it compare to my situation right now? And I feel like for all people on earth, like it feels like it feels like there would be like less guilt and pain around our ancestry on all sides, in all ethnic groups, if we were seeing things that way. I am right now feeling the upheaval of that pain and guilt, because I think that as you say, like, it's not about like repeating history. It's not about having a burden on you. It's just about having the knowledge. But saying like, I live in a world where I can do things differently. Or I think what my ancestors did was great, so I'm gonna keep doing that. And so like there is great power in like really like seeing that you have that choice, and that your ancestral DNA is your way to freedom, actually, instead of a burden. And I think that's beautiful to consider it that way. All right, so how are you guys feeling so far? I see that you're yawning. Are you in a people like me, or are you in a people like me? You know, yawning is like release, right?
What does that mean?
Upheaval?
Oh, upheaval.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm definitely like integrating all of this, and but I really like what you said about like shifting the perspective there, right? And instead of seeing it as a burden, seeing it as like a blueprint, like our pathway to even greater freedom, and like appreciating the choice that we do have because they led the way. It makes me think about like the TFAS classes where Jeff and Shaleia talk about how they were the first ones to obtain harmonious union, and it was like the hardest for them. And so it doesn't have to be as hard for the rest of us, right? Like the hard part is over. And so, yeah, just like appreciating that.
I think you've touched on a very important part of life, is that pioneer energy that we forget to respect. Because yes, people have done it before and it's been harder for them. But there's still a part for us to play. And in our part, we're carrying that pioneer energy as well. And that's something that's in our ancestral DNA as well. Like, you know, it can't be divorced. It's almost encoded in our genetics. It's encoded in the genetics of humanity. That pioneering energy, that energy of finding newer and better and healthier ways of doing things. And sometimes that pioneer energy does lead to some choices that we may not all agree with. But at the same time, if those people hadn't shown us spaces of contrast through their pioneering energy, we wouldn't have had the opportunity that we have to heal in a pioneering way. So I feel like, you know, like that interconnection just becomes so much more clear because of the fact that they highlight these contrasts. And for us on our healing journey, that contrast is not something we're choosing in our reality. And so we have the opportunity to heal it at a deeper level. And so as we heal it at a deeper level, that vibration has to realign. It has to shift. You cannot heal in that space and remain in that vibration. There will be a vibrational shift. It's the energy of a new vibrational set point that we learn through Jeff and Shaleia's work as well. And it's something that we get to embody. Like who would have been able to tell us 50 years ago that this would be such a peaceful conversation? For instance, you know, just as an example, there may be many other things, but this, like 50 years ago, this might have been a conversation fraught with tears and wailing and screaming and all that other stuff. And it's not. We can comfortably go into those very uncomfortable places and heal them quite peacefully without throwing ourselves onto the ground in adult tantrums. And I'm not saying that people mourning and doing those kind of things is the wrong thing. I'm just saying, again, it comes back to that we realize how much power we have and how we can use that power for ourselves and therefore for everybody else. The more we step into the power, the more we step into celebrating the freedom, the more we're inviting people to join us there, which is a really cool space to be as well. So having said that, I feel quite complete with today's conversation, so I'm just checking in with everybody.
Yeah, it sounds pretty good, I think. I just wanted to add one last thing. I think it's quite cool, that idea, that message of like, we are able to invite more people into this conversation. It's like, hey, this place has been feeling raw and sensitive for a lot of people for decades, maybe centuries and lifetimes. And now we have that peace offering, that simple answer, that tool, that discussion with other people together, so that you feel less pain in this place. I think it's quite a cool message. That's all.
Yeah, good. So thank you everybody for the conversation today. Thank you for the healing. Yeah, thank you for the celebration. And to everybody else that's been following us, thank you for your time and your contribution to our conversations. We'd also just like to invite you again to like and subscribe to our Church of Union YouTube channel, where you will find our previous conversations that have happened in the Unionism Spiritual Discussion Group on Facebook, and also any other live conversations that have been placed on our YouTube channel. There's a lot of awesome content, so please feel free to peruse it, like and subscribe, and look out for additional conversations in our series. And we look forward to seeing you next week.